Hi everyone, we're here for a special bumper session that's going to become a recording to support a practice. And the practice that we're focusing on is this one we picked up in week or session 22, which was reframing your story, which itself is part of what we're talking about when we discuss soul retrieval. So Luis is with me because it's so much easier when you're doing this to have a focal point to speak to. So thanks, Luis, for making the time. And we're going to put this little document or this little artifact together for people to use. Soul retrieval is so important. For so much of my own journey and all of the teachings that I was sharing, I've always been looking for additional arrows to put in the quiver. These additional things we can add to our arsenal, tools for our toolkit, all these different ways we can come at the challenge or the problem. And our problem always is undefined. It's got lots of ways of framing it and lots of paradigms we can discuss it in. And I came across this idea of soul retrieval, which if you look it up, it will be framed as something that you do in a plant medicine ceremony, maybe with a shaman, and it's about somebody guiding you, holding your hand to take you back to encounter difficult parts of your own childhood usually. And I think that can be a part of it, absolutely. But I think the possibility or the potential of this is so much bigger, so much bigger. And the more I started exploring how might one go about this project of soul retrieval, so I did it the way I do so many things. I take the idea and I ask myself, what is the purpose? What's the point? What's the intention of this? And then before I do any research, I just sit with those questions and ask myself. And I know what the word soul means. Well, I didn't fully actually, but I know what the word retrieve means. So I came up with lots of ideas, ways in which I could pursue this project of soul retrieval. And some of them are to do with the story, the narrative component of our life that we connect to and identify with. And some of them are just energetic. And it's important to remember that part of the apprenticeship to this language set and the set of ideas that I'm transmitting to everybody in the class is that I speak about this principle of signal. In other words, how life emanates from the divine and manifests as us, as individuals, as powers, as forces, as forms that we live with and interact with. And signal has two components: message or payload and energy. And that's the same with radio signal. There's actually a payload carried on the radio wave, but you need to up the amplitude sometimes to be able to push the signal further. And some of the sense of soul that we are trying to retrieve or reconnect with is patching and cleaning up the narrative and the story and recalibrating the story from something shallow and fact-based and detailed into something much richer and deeper. And the other part of it is to reclaim these bits of energetic vitality that we have stemmed the flow of through our memories, especially through traumatic memories or through moments of great shame or embarrassment or moments where we abandoned ourselves in some way. We neglected our authenticity in favor of trying to comply with something or someone else. So this particular project is less about the energetic retrieval. We'll do another session perhaps on what that looks like. This particular session, this particular practice is just taking the story of your life and sitting down like a very friendly, very honest journalist and interviewing yourself and saying, tell me the story of your life, the clinical details, so that we can both, you and the journalist, inspect them and look and say, is that actually the whole depth of my truth? Is actually this shallow list of dates and facts and occurrences and moments, is this the sum total of who I am. Now, let's jump to the definition of soul. What is soul? Soul is a word that's so misunderstood and so misused. And there's a lot of confusion around that word due to its misuse. And this is the interpretation that I'm sitting with at the moment. Soul is our sense of yearning for meaning, for purpose. It is the energetic way we connect to the wellspring of life and of meaning. When we think of our spiritual projects or what it is that we're trying to touch, there's two, actually, you have to stop and think about this for a moment. There's actually two different kinds of projects wrapped up into this thing that we're trying to bundle and imagine as only one thing. The picture of the tree helps us get there. It's reaching up towards the sky and towards the light in its actualization, in the reaching towards its infinite potential and what we want to call God or the divine or whatever the implication is of that what we feel and mean when we use words like divine or God. And obviously these are intended to be used in a much bigger context than what gets provided for us through religion. But then there's this other aspect, the Jungian aspect of the tree and its life and existence below the ground, out of the visible light, reaching down, anchoring into the earth, getting nourishment from the earth, but also getting stability and anchoring. And that is the other half of this project that we're trying to do as well. Now, what we mean when we say soul is two things. It's the potential pathways that the tree might lean up and follow that actually aligns with our true self, that we feel authentically called to and aligned to. And the only way we pick up that signal, that payload, is the energetic recovery of who we are below the surface. Because, excuse me, fate and destiny don't work the way you think it works. They're just a signal again that we can align with, we can rebel against, we can choose. But the thing inside your heart that does the choosing when you are being true to yourself is the signal of who you are. And in a human life, you have to pick that signal up and you have to learn to drown out the other noises that are interfering and the other kind of signals being carried around you, because there's a lot of noise and distortion at the moment. And when you're feeling aligned, when you're feeling connecting with a person that truly touches your heart in a special way, when you're feeling you're doing work or you're in a state of flow, that flow simply means alignment with your authentic version of the signal. And that's what we each are. We each are an expression, personal expression, an individual expression of the whole signal of life. And we're just one of those little filaments in the lightning bolt. And the closer we get to our channel where we belong, it's not to say that your fate has been decided, but your potential is already mapped out. Like a river course, even before the water starts flowing, the river course is always going to fall into the lowest channel in that place as it makes its way towards the ocean. And if the land heaves and moves, the river will change its course, but the river will always change its course to the path of least resistance. And that path of least resistance for us is our signal. But reading that field requires this connection with our roots to the world, our roots to our childhood, our roots to our connection to our inner child, our trust and relationship with our inner child, our energetic connection and recovery of all this bit of our vitality that we dropped along the way, as well as the realization that we are the result of inherited DNA, inherited wishes, inherited mind frames, inherited psychology of our ancestors, of which we are also a product. So the way kind of makes the way. as the river was doing its thing further upstream, it kind of determined where we would be here now, trying to find our way in our authentic way. And here's the trick: trying to understand all of this can be complex because why? Because we're trying to think of it from our left brain, our logic, our reason, the cold, calculating way that we have shaped the life and the world around us. All our software interfaces, all our social media interfaces, all of our processes in life, all of our institutions, all of our buildings, all of the way everything works is to service this logical left brain part of our story, part of our experience, the one that sees everything and everyone in an objectified way. Either this thing is for me or it's against me. Either this thing is an opportunity or it's a threat or a risk. And I need to look at everything as data, and I need to process and parse all of that data. And when there's too much data, what do I feel? I feel overwhelmed because I'm trying to understand everything perfectly literally. Now, there's two invitations. There's two invitations that we know of where we can signal to the left brain, this is not a problem to solve. This is not something that you're going to understand. You can suspend your style of trying to solve and process the world for a moment. Another framing is taking place. And one of the ways you'll notice the bell draws your attention in a very harmonious way and sets a signal to attune to. And then as you invariably, a part of your attention follows it, it recedes into silence. And it's actually an invitation into silence. It's a direction your awareness can follow into silence. It's one of our invitations out of our left brain into this different way of being, of seeing the world, of processing things, of awareness. The other way is what we teach children every time we read to them, every time we tell them fairy stories or myths and legends. What are myths? A myth is a way of speaking lies, untruths, made up stuff, fiction, in a way that tells a deeper truth. They are capturing not just because they are entertaining, they are capturing and entertaining because they touch something in us. They touch something true about the world, a true way about people, a true way about the nature of the world, a true way about our nature and the way our nature interacts with other people's nature and interacts with the nature of the world, in a way that would be laborious and boring to explain via a left brain modality. And the words we use, the magic phrase is once upon a time. Once upon a time. Once upon a time is an invocation. It's the setting of a framing that says, imagination rules here. Imagination rules here. Left brain, you can stand aside. There is nothing to solve. This is not a riddle. Once upon a time, our sense of space-time, our clinical framing of how things work and what the cause and effect are, this is a different framing. This was once upon a time. Not long ago. We don't say long, long ago. We say once upon a time, which means a sense of timing different to the one that we expect to encounter here in the tangible, the cold, the real, the physical. Once upon a time. So one of the key projects of soul retrieval, and there are many, is the reframing of your story. Your story. Because if we ever want to be this whole tree, the full experience below the surface and the full experience, the ongoing unfolding above the surface, we have to break free of this matrix, this limiting shell of framing and understanding that we explain when somebody says, "Who are you? Who do you think you are? What's your story? Who are your people? Who are your ancestors?" We don't actually sit really with these questions. And we don't realize that we've had so many different phases. We've almost been different people at 2 or 3 times in our lives. By the time you hit 40 or 50, you've had 2 or 3 lives. If you've been divorced, you've had at least 2 lives, at least 2 lives. If you've had a school career, you've had at least 2 lives. If you've had a school career and you've been divorced, you've had at least 3 lives. And like all stories, there's a clinical, boring way of framing that. And then there's this deep, rich, mythological lens to look at the world. This exercise we're about to share together now is about getting yourself out of the narrow reductionist left brain framing, the boring account of the details and the facts which are missing the essence. The essence. That is what you are. You are an essence. Missing the essence and your sense of aliveness and meaning right here in the heart of everything. This is about your authentic identification with the hero in your own story. Some of us even are uncomfortable. We have 2 conversations that happen in our head when we say the word, "You are the hero in your own story." The one is an excitement that wants to be that hero and wants to connect with the depth of what's possible there. And the other one is the grumpy protector that says, no, that's childish. We don't do that. That's ridiculous. And both of those voices are speaking at the same time. This is safe. This is play. This is an instantiation of life, which means we're going to invoke the once upon a time rule. We're going to step outside the fear of what might not be reasonable and possible, and we're just going to explore what else is there. And there are questions we can use to sit with, and this is what this practice is. It's the sitting with these kind of questions, which really allow our original soul to speak, to allow an overdue challenge to the smallness of the narrative we currently hold. Soul is not a thing. Soul is not a thing like a light or an egg or a... It's got many ways of understanding it. One way is a flame, and a flame can die low and can be kindled into a furnace. A flame can burn brightly. Another way is of a fountain, something that flows, and it can flow down to a trickle and even be stopped or dammed up, and it can be released. And we feel the damming and releasing of those in our traumatic and exciting emotional moments. Soul is the essence of yearning for meaning, for purpose that defines you and defines everything we long to connect with in this world and in this life. That's the idea that we're going to sit with. And all of the sickness in ourself comes from this limiting belief that we've inherited from our world due to our disconnection from this essence and our disconnection and damming up and staunching of this wellspring of vitality. So find your seat, settle down, drop in, clear your cache, make sure whatever chattering, thinking, expectations you have, you notice so that you can lay them aside, and try and be fully present in the moment. Try and participate in this invitation. The first question we're going to sit with is a series of words, actually. And we're going to look at our current paradigm, the way that we see our story. We're going to look at the elements of a story. and we're going to look at definitions. And the invitation is to ask these questions in a challenging way that allows us to disrupt the definition or the explanation or the description that we've got written in this book of our mind. These things were not written in pen, they were written in pencil. They were placeholders for a deeper, richer idea that you are being invited to touch, explore, and understand now. Challenge is a good thing. In order to grow, by definition, we have to outgrow the version of ourselves we already are. And the limits of my language become the limits of my world. The limits of my paradigm, the way I describe my story, define the limits that I live with and that I set for myself and that I accept. That was the actual message in The Matrix, the movie. It's a Gnostic narrative. It's about freeing oneself from limitations in your mind. Free your mind. Free your mind. So to begin with the current paradigm, I've got a few words here: narrative, horizon, scope, identity, topology, orientation, responsibility, and framing. These are just quite boring words, actually. But when we touch each one of them, we can explore them from this place of once upon a time. What does it mean? The first invitation is to understand that there is a possibility that I am in the middle of an enormous arc of a whole story. And then to look at the way that I've been holding that conversation with life. What is the narrative? What is the tone? What is the story of your life? What is my narrative? What is my narrative? Different phases of our life, our narrative changes. It matures. Sometimes it has a bit of a victim arc to it or a victim accent to it. Sometimes it has a meaninglessness accent to it. Sometimes it has a woe is me, I'm lost, I'm stuck, I'm unhappy, I'm angry, I'm broken. What is my current narrative? And with you in the room is this part of you that can be honest but critical journalist, that can look at the truth of something and hear someone say something and realize when they are fooling themselves. Journalists are very good at that. They ask people questions, they ask them lots of questions. And slowly but surely they start seeing a truth about some things that are unsaid, or they read between the lines, or they overhear people telling on themselves. Every story has a horizon. It's set in a certain setting or scene to which there are limits. Shakespeare famously always framed his stories in a certain city or a certain village or a certain kingdom. And there may have been 3 or 4 settings within that, but they were finite. So what is your horizon? What is your horizon of your life? What is your horizon of possibility? How near or how bold are the limits that define my horizon? Horizons are a metaphor for the limit that we can see, but they're also a kind of invitation, asking us what's beyond that horizon. Is it adventure? Is it risk? Is it danger? Is it a horizon we're walking away from? Or is it a horizon we're walking towards? Or are we stuck in the middle of a circular valley or on some kind of mountaintop where everywhere around us there's just more question marks. We're lost. We don't know which way. Every way looks the same. What is the scope of my current story, my current paradigm? How big is the story of my story? Does it cover me, my loved ones? Is there something larger? Is it a business? Is it a team? Is it a project? What is the scope of my story? Which is really a question about how big am I? And one way of looking at that is the horizons, the invitations, or the things that we're running away from. But the other way is asking, what are the things that I care about? Positive and negative. Is it limited to just me? Is it to just me right now? Am I thinking about my future? Am I thinking about the man I might become? Am I thinking about the legacy I might leave in this world? My potential? A bucket list? My ambitions, are they mine? Did I inherit them? Do I really want them? Identity. Who am I exactly? How do I describe myself? If writing the shorthand version of this narrative down, what is this? What is this thing? Who is Rocco? Who is Luis? Who am I? Who do you think you are? 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 Which means other people think you are something. And they might hold a version of you, which we call your reputation. They might keep a copy in their minds, which they hold with respect or with fondness or with indifference. But who do you think you are? The other invitation is, who do you think you are? Which means I might actually be something and I might be thinking something different. And how much of that is a story? How much of that is accurate? How small is that? I often say, we are who we repeatedly choose to be. What are you choosing? And things about yourself which you don't like, which you are not working to change, means you are choosing. We are who we repeatedly choose to be. Who do you think you are? Who am I? Who am I in all of this? The next word is topology. Topology is a word that describes the landscape and the relationship to things. So if we think of an area of a valley with mountains, the topology would be where the mountains are, what the elevation is. If it was planets and solar systems, the topology would be just the arrangement of those clusters of things and their relationship to each other. And the invitation is to say, what is the shape of the world around me, of the obstacles, the ways, the challenges, the forces, the open doors, the closed doors? Where is the water? Where is the flow? Where is the stillness of the mountain? Where is the emptiness of the desert? Where is the vast invitation of the open sky? Where is the fire? And where do I stand in all of this? What's my orientation? What's my orientation to my horizons? What's my orientation to this topology? Is it frightening? Am I a master of this? Am I an adventurer? And to help us answer that question, we ask, what's my responsibility, and to whom is my responsibility? Is my responsibility to show up in a certain way? To keep alive this version of myself which wants to die? To become something I don't feel aligned with? To learn? To grow? To change? To face discomfort? To hold space for myself, for someone else? For my family, for my loved ones, for my friends, for a belief? Is it my responsibility to hold space for a belief or a political ideology or an idea, or for someone else's validation in this world? Is that my responsibility? Have I neglected my responsibility to hold space for myself, expecting validation and support from somewhere else, someone else? And the last word is framing, because framing is the invitation to understand that everything is a spectrum. Cold is a spectrum, tall is a spectrum. Tall is only tall compared to something else that is short, but compared to something else that is taller, this tall is not the tallest, there is taller. And everything that we can describe about ourselves, cowardly, shameful, proud, brave, strong, weak, hungry, angry, upset, lost, it's a question of framing. And can we open our eyes to the fact that all of those questions around scope, around topology, around orientation, around responsibility were not linear. There was polarity to them. There's a gradient. There's a curve. And all you have to do is change your perspective and include something wider, deeper. Might be the plight of somebody else's life, might be the blessings that you have, and suddenly things can be reframed. And I challenge my framing. Because when you see a picture in a museum, piece of art, and you ask, what is that? They'll say, it's a bowl of fruit, it's a sailing boat. What it actually is a small snapshot of the world that focused on one thing. But if you could imagine it like a window, and you could widen the frame or narrow the frame, every painting is of everything in this world. The bowl of fruit is also about the table, it's also about the kitchen, it's also about the orchards where the fruit came from, it's about the light shining through the window. It's about the chair that the painter is sitting on. The next part we're going to explore is not our current paradigm, but just these elements of story. Story has a genre, a drama, a comedy, a fantasy. What is the genre of my story? What is the genre of my story? How would I describe the genre of my story? Is it a drama? Is it a dry account of days doing the same thing? Is it a hyperactive story of looking who to blame for the things that are wrong in my life? Is it a redemption arc? Is it a rescue mission? Is it an adventure? What don't you like about that answer? Because what you don't like about these answers will describe accurately the life that your soul wants to live in this world. And also just make sure that what you do or don't like isn't about the gallery of critics from which we inherit all of our shit ideas in our desperate seeking for validation from their approval. What's the plot? Stories have a plot. Are there twists? What's the backstory? Everyone's got a backstory. Every superhero has a backstory. Every hero has a backstory. Who was their mother and their father? Was one of their parents a god? Was there some omen they were born under? Was there some blessing or some curse? Was there a prophecy at their birth? Were they the youngest, the oldest? What does that mean? What's the plot? What's my backstory? My backstory also includes my ancestors. And the more I can appreciate the way even my not so great human beings and characters that allowed me to be here today, they still allowed me to be here today. I don't owe them everything, but I owe them something. And have I even taken the trouble to go and understand where my people come from, what they endured to allow me the life that I have today, what choices they made to leave, to travel, to risk, to dare, to run away, to run towards, to fight battles, to stand up for things, to try and force a life out of a very uncompromising world, to try stay alive, stay healthy, have children, have their own dreams. What's my backstory? Because my backstory is an inheritance made up of all of that richness, all of that richness, all of their wishes, all of their dreams, potentially lived through me. You don't decide what to want with your life. You wake up in this moment and you just want what you want. You like what you like. You feel how you feel. There's no decision in that. It's just a truth that you can wake up to and align with. And you inherited part of that truth through your DNA, through the tissue, through your backstory, but also through this psychological backstory of our society, the beliefs that we hold about gods, about rules, about morality. This is all part of our very rich backstory. Suddenly our question of topology and horizon and scope and orientation and framing blows so wide open when we sit with those questions. And the main question is, where are we in this story arc? Where does our myth fit into the whole epic saga of humanity or of our ancestors? In my life, is this the beginning, the middle, or the end? Is there a change coming? Has a change just happened? Is there a battle gonna come? Where are we in the story arc? And where are we in the story arc of humanity? Is this the beginning? Is this some middle? Is this some terrible end? All stories require forces at work. Natural forces, forces of will, the things that move the pieces on the board, that make movement, that generate the drama, the comedy, the adventure in a story. What are the forces that you are aware of? What are the forces that are moving in your life that you are not aware of? Are you thinking about these in a small way? There is an idea called pronoia. It basically means that everything in the world is out to help me grow. My life is happening for me, not to me. I am actually the center of this particular experience, and the world is so amazing that it allows every single one of us to have a rich and personal experience. And the shallower we engage with the story of our lives, the more we become these kind of soulless non-player characters, people that mimic the people around them, that choose a common, regular identity. These people are not characters. You've met characters in your life. They break the mold. They say their own things. They act weird. They've got their own sense of humor. And then you've met people that you could replace with one of a million just like them, that say the same things, do the same things. That capacity, for better or worse, is soul. That makes the difference. And who are the main characters in our life? Who are the helpers? Who are the needers? Who are the harmers? Who are the leaders? Who are our guides? And how might someone else describe us as our stories clash? To really understand this project, we need to look at a couple of definitions. One of them is progress. What is progress to you? What does it mean? How have you defined progress? Is it an expansive idea, or is it a fixed idea of progress? Does progress only look like a certain pathway or pattern? What is the progress of a tree growing? It starts off as a seed. It falls down, breaks open, releases that last little bit of shelter and covering that it was clinging onto, being abandoned from the tree, and it cracks open, and it puts a little taproot down towards the earth, and it puts a little first sprout up towards the sky. And it's so delicate. The hoof of an animal could come along and trample it and it would be dead. But it slowly grows into a sapling, and it goes through its own first season, because something in the world told it when it was time, in a language it didn't even know it was listening to. And it arrived there in the spring, and it grew up through the summer. And just when it says to itself, here I am, I'm a thing in this world, I'm holding on, its leaves fall off, and the way it has now grown to be starts ending. And then it dies in a way. It retreats into the roots of itself. And we tell ourselves when we retreat into the roots of ourselves during winter, it's a death, it's a losing of ourselves, it's a resignation from life, it's an ending. But it's actually just a rebounding, a recharging, a letting go of the way I was in the last season, so that I can gather my strength, connect with soul again, so that come the spring, I can burst forth into a new arc of actualization, of flourishing, of experience. Now, from a very small perspective, that winter, it's the end, it's death, it's dying, it's the undoing. How many times are we facing undoings in our life with a sense of dread, with a small framing, with a small idea, cauterizing our soul again and again and again, leaving vitality behind us on the field because we're so afraid of this close moment that we're looking at through such a narrow perspective. Progress was all of that. Progress isn't linear, it's spiral. Everything we do comes in these tides. They have seasons, it ebbs and flows. And yes, you do get further and further and further along in your journey if you're leaning that way. But even the forward progress isn't steady. It's forward and then back, and then forward and then back. And if we can't redefine progress, we have a lot of confusion about our story and our narrative. And the other question is, what is success? What is this ambition? What is it going to look like when you're doing the thing? And who helped you define that? Sit with these questions. They are the beginning of the actual project that we are all doing here. Soul retrieval is not a piece, a quiver in the arrow. It turns out soul retrieval was the whole project. There is nothing else. To touch your true authenticity, to let go of the smallness in you, to find a way to let that wellspring of vitality flow in its own way again, to rekindle that fire in your own heart. Even when it burns low, and you dig amongst the black sticks, you'll see that life has written something new amongst the ashes. And sometimes the ash needs to be cleared away. The fire needs to be set anew. Sometimes the spring isn't a steady flow, this wellspring. Sometimes it's seasonal as well, it goes down to a trickle. And sometimes it can't give you all this flow that you're looking for. Sometimes something else in you needs to carry it. Your community, your sense of myth, the way that you hold that framing together in your 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. You build your practices so that in your low ebb and your low moments, when you can't hear the signal so well, your practices can carry you. The road seen, then not seen. The road seen, then not seen. The hillside hiding, then revealing the way you should take. The road dropping away from you, dropping away, then catching you just when you thought you would fall. And the road in the end, the road forward in the end, always the way that you came, the way that you followed, that carried you from deep inside yourself, far out into the revelation. So that you realized that what you were seeking was also all this time seeking you. And that you had carried the heart and the mind and the soul of it deep inside yourself. And that you were more marvelous in your simple wish to find a way than the gilded roofs of any destination you had hoped to reach. So that what you thought was the ending turned out to be only just the beginning. And this vast field of beckoning, opening up, an invitation to another life. Now, that's brutally paraphrased from the work of David White. And if you want the full hit of that, go and look up the poem Santiago and sit with that. But my friends, Luis, thank you very much for your time. I've got to go jump in with the family. Thank you for booking this time. Thank you for sitting, holding space. I think this is going to be a very useful artifact for everyone. And I know that you got a lot out of it. I could just see that, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Rocco.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
It was a powerful...
This is the whole project. Is
Yeah.
there anything you wanted to say? I've got a minute before I have to dash.
No, this is a powerful exercise that I will be coming back to and receiving new insights into myself, because every time you ask the question, you're in a different stage in your life and you can see what it was before, what it is now, and what it can be in the future. So something to hold on to and come back to this practice.
You know,
Thank
and
you
when
so
you
much.
do the inner child work and you're actually sitting with that conversation and sitting with that part of your wounded self, you can actually now sit with the wisdom of perspective and context, and which actually makes that a much more real conversation instead of this, oh, I'm just supposed to step up. What do I do? What do I say? It's perspective. What do children want? They want the safety of perspective. They want to understand why. Why did this happen? Why is this happening? Who am I?
Speaking
All
of
right.
inner child, I think that exercise also merits another little
You
container.
keep booking them, I'll keep doing them. But right now, I've got to go and look at after my outer child.
All right.
Okay,
Thank
take
you.
care. Love you. Bye.